Oh, son of a gun. You thought I was gonna say son of a bitch, didn't you?
I've long had a fascination with crossovers, both from the incredibly cool team-ups such as Generator Rex meeting Ben 10, to goofy crossovers like the new Scooby-Doo movies, to grand-scale clashing of titans like the Avengers films, Magic's Universes Beyond series, Marvel vs. Capcom, and Super Smash Bros. And Smash really has been the king of crossovers. Not only does it cross over the largest lineup of series, and bring dream matchups never thought possible into reality, it wraps it up in one of the most satisfying forms, making your characters beat the snot out of each other and send each other flying with wacky hijinks straight out of a cartoon. And yet, only in modern times have we begun to see contemporaries pop up to stand alongside it, both in gameplay with titles like Rivals of Aether and Rushdown Revolt, and its crossover aspect, notably with brands filled with equally eclectic and iconic lineups of characters, such as Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl and its stellar sequel, the indie platform fighter Framemakers, as well as today's topic, Multiversus. With a big budget and an interesting twist on the platform fighter genre, Multiversus took the world by storm when it hit early access about 8 months after its initial announcement, and for a while it did capture the hearts of platform fighter players, though the flaws soon started to make themselves known. Flaws I intend to discuss in another video at some point. But to make my stance clear, I believe that the game should have launched in a state much closer to its contemporaries, a larger roster of fighters with a focus more on the all-star power that Warner Bros.' massive library has to offer, and should have been launched closer to its new projected relaunch date. This would have given the team the time to build a much more complete, cohesive product, one that they could theoretically sell at a normal price point. You'd still have the options for a battle pass, viable skins, and characters you can unlock through grinding or by paying an upfront price, but the launch of the game and its initial lineup of fighters were a complete disaster, leaving a lot to be desired in my opinion. It focuses on a select lineup of franchises, double-dipping while important IP remain completely untouched. So I decided to sit down and ask, if we could reboot it from the very beginning, who would I pick? Let's go over fighter goals real quick. First, this game would have theoretically launched in mid to late 2024, giving about 4 years of known development time. I would argue that this would allow enough time to increase the roster up to a little larger than Super Smash Bros. Melee's roster. I ended up selecting 30, as that's about the size of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2's roster post-DLC, to our knowledge at least, and they built that in 2 years for the base game. I think this is a more than fair number for twice the development time. Second, the lineup must all be from Warner Bros. Properties. Third, my priority for selecting characters is to increase the variety of franchises represented, as Warner Bros. Owns a large and diverse lineup of properties. Fourth, I'd like to balance out the class representation. I want to accentuate the meaning of each class, as well as make each character feel more distinct, as I don't think the game as is does a very good job of doing either. As a quick refresher, the classes include the Bruiser, which are all-rounders focused on melee hits, Assassin, which generally are rushdown characters, Tank, which are heavyweights that are harder to launch, Support, which contribute to the fight in less direct ways, and Mage, which are more tricky to deal with, utilizing traps and zoning tools. Unfortunately, this means some characters had to be cut. In total, I elected to remove 5 of them, as follows. Black Adam, as his addition was a soulless attempt at promoting his then upcoming film, and there are many other DC characters who should have taken priority before him. Similarly, the inclusion of LeBron is likewise an attempt at advertising a recent film, and while I think his playstyle is interesting, it could easily be given to Lola Bunny or one of the Monstars instead. Additionally, I don't feel comfortable with including real-life people as themselves in games, especially when controversy can easily tarnish their reputation, retroactively making their appearance very awkward. So we're benching LeBron in this lineup. In my opinion, Taz, while an interesting and iconic character in his own right, does not have as interesting moveset potential as another Looney Tunes character I chose for the roster, and as such was replaced. I do think he should be brought back when the roster is bigger though. I feel similarly about Stripe, as while I personally like the character and enjoy playing as him, the Gremlins is not a large enough franchise to take up 2 spots with the current size of the roster. Gizmo represents an underrepresented class as well, and is clearly the more iconic of the two, meaning he was the obvious pick to stay. Lastly, Morty's playstyle is mostly built upon tools that would have made just as much sense on Rick's moveset, ultimately making him stand out less from a character design standpoint. As much as I feel both are worth representing, I'm going to have to demote him to background cameo. So, now that we've kept 18 fighters, who's joining the fight? Let's get swifty and find out.
I'll start it this time. Right. Wabbit season. Duck season. Wabbit season. Wabbit season. Duck season. Fire!
Daffy Duck.
We have one mascot of the Looney Tunes, but just as iconic to the brand, nay, the Luigi to Bugs' Mario, the ill-fated cartoon rival to one of Disney's most iconic characters, Daffy Duck should have absolutely been in since the very beginning. Similar to Bugs, he'd use a variety of tools and items from iconic shorts he's appeared in his almost 100-year history. Or he could use tools he picked up from his time in a more modern classic, like the Looney Tunes show. But personally, I think it'd be cool to make him utilize some of his iconic alter egos from classic shorts, such as his Superman parody, Stupor Duck, as an up special, the Scarlet Pumpernickel, a Zorro-esque swordsman for a side special, or his Robin Hood form for a neutral special. Or he could be a stance change fighter between his normal self and his space-altering alter ego, Duck Dodgers, with different specials for each form like Pyra and Mithra in Smash or the Angry Beavers in Nick All-Stars. One way or the other, he'd fit in perfectly alongside Bugs to represent one of the most iconic comedy pairings of all time, and he really should be in for legacy's sake alone. Looney Tunes weirdly doesn't have a stage yet, so maybe they could use Duck Dodger's starship, kinda like Corneria is in SmashBros.
Scorpion.
For being a fighting game developed underneath the Warner Bros. Banner, I would have expected a fighter from Mortal Kombat to have already joined the roster at the very beginning. Yes, they've owned this series since they started, and there are even multiple references to the iconic Gorefest already in the game. Obviously, they'd have to tone down any characters from MK, but they already did that for Injustice, and with Scorpion basically becoming an anti-hero in the series itself, as well as being the series mascot, I think he's the natural pick, especially since you can't have Johnny Cage decking Steven Universe in the nuts, as funny as that would be. How would he fight? Well, that's easy considering his origin. All his iconic moves are there. His Spear Toss, Teleport, Demon Breath, his new Hellflame wheel ability from his most recent outing, it all fits perfectly. And since we'll never see him in official Smash, this is probably the best we can get. As far as obvious picks go, he's about the most obvious. His stage would be the Palace Gates from the original Mortal Kombat. While it's not the most iconic location, it's one of the few that doesn't feature some materials that would need to bump up the age rating.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
The Wicked Witch.
For our next fighter, we definitely won't be in Earthrealm anymore. There were two characters I considered picking for this slot, both due to having data already existing in the game, Beetlejuice and the Wicked Witch of the West. And as much as I'd love to see both, I figured the Witch would be a better pick for the base game for diversity's sake. She'd be a mage class, of course, and she'd utilize the ability to fire off dark magic from her wand with cartoony spell effects. Maybe with a curse debuff as her neutral special? She could call forth a flying monkey to grapple a target, or steal items from them as her side special. Her down special would set up a field of poppies to make anyone who touches them fall asleep for her to freely start a combo on, and her up special would utilize her classic broomstick. Her loss animation could have her melting, while her victory animation could have her reclaim the ruby slippers, and her stage would have to be the Land of Oz, fighting on the yellow brick road of Munchkin Land, with the Emerald City in the background, and Dorothy's house would be seen as well.
Oh, yeah.
センブランスビーコンアカデミーの生徒か
Ruby.
With the advent of the Yellow Brick Road and Emerald City of the Land of Oz, I think we need a little red to balance it out. It's not exactly something that's the most well-known, but Warner Bros. Does in fact own Rooster Teeth, and thus makes all their properties eligible to be included. But let's be real, only one of them has any form of mainstream popularity and potential to be included in this game. RWBY. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a huge fan of the series, but its popularity cannot be understated, and it's a sorely needed representative of the internet age of WB history. I guess you could say I'm a fan of its potential. It's got interesting lore, character design, weapon design, and that goes double for the Scarlet Huntress herself. Her weapon, Crescent Rose, is a hybrid between a sniper rifle and a scythe, making her perfect for a hit-and-run playstyle, combined with her semblance, Petal Burst, which allows her limited flight and speed that equivocally lets her teleport, would create a genuinely cool moveset. The anime aesthetic isn't something Multiversus has really tapped into, and RWBY could have some genuinely cool interactions with other characters. Imagine Velma not believing in her supernatural powers, Batman complimenting her tech, or Steven comparing her weapon to Spinell's. It's a treasure trove of potential fun team-ups. Her stage could be Beacon Academy, though I'll admit that it's similar to another stage I chose later on, so instead I would have her stage be the streets of Vale, perhaps located in the commercial district near From Dusk Till Dawn and the Noodle Shop. This is the location where RWBY first demonstrates her fighting capabilities in the series, so I think it would make a perfect stage.
Long ago in a distant land, I, Aku, the shape-shifting master of darkness, unleashed an unspeakable evil. But a foolish samurai warrior wielding a magic sword stepped forth to oppose me.
Samurai Jack.
One of the biggest issues I personally have with the current lineup of fighters hailing from Cartoon Network is that they all represent the modern era of CN. Not a single one of the 6 we have thus far is from my era, and furthermore, they're all from only 3 different shows: Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, and Steven Universe. This is a crime that must be rectified, and the first and most obvious choice for me is Samurai Jack, having come back to the past to join in on the fight for the multiverse. Jack's got more than enough sword techniques to hold his own. He's used plenty of tools as well that he could utilize in his attacks, such as a bow and arrow, which he could use as a neutral special. He could use some martial arts for his normal attacks, utilize a classic samurai flick attack with delayed slashes, with the blade being unsheathed and resheathed frequently, kinda like Yusuke in Persona 5 Scramble or Jin Saikai in Ghost of Tsushima. And if ever there was a character who deserves a counter, it's him. His stage would be Aku's fortress, with Aku maniacally laughing as he watches the fight in the background.
Hold your breath.
Willy Wonka.
While it's a much more recent acquisition, Warner Bros. Does indeed, as of 2016, own the rights to the iconic Roald Dahl book and its adaptations, making the eccentric Candyman an absolutely exquisite, scrum-diddly-umptious potential brawler to join into the battle. But old Willy doesn't tend to perform the more questionable actions of his employees. He's a bystander by technicality, so his role in this game would be a support character. He could utilize special gum to temporarily disable fighters by turning them into blueberries, give himself or his allies changed gravity physics to assist with recovery using fizzy lifting drinks, or he could buff allies or debuff enemies with his delicious sweets, maybe applying liquid chocolate that slows fighters down, or by giving his allies candy. It could act like Garfield's special mechanic in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, giving them a sugar rush that makes them run, jump, and fall faster, introducing them to a world of pure imagination. And for when he does need to defend himself, he's still got his trusty cane to wield and keep foes at range. He wasn't really one for being touched or social norms after all. His stage would be the Chocolate Factory, specifically set in the chocolate room itself, with delectable treats forming platforms above the chocolate river. Some Oompa Loompas could even dance in the background, while an intense new version of either their song, or perhaps a triumphant version of World of Pure Imagination plays in the background.
Fred Flintstone.
We've got some more modern Warner icons, but the amount of classics can never truly be enough. And outside of Scooby-Doo, Tom and Jerry, and the Looney Tunes, I can think of no more of a classic series to represent than the modern Stone Age sitcom, The Flintstones. It's a series that, despite it all, has managed to age incredibly gracefully, and is still remembered fondly even to this day, so I think good old Fred is more than deserving of a spot, and it's not like he's never been in a scrap before. While not something he usually wields, I can imagine him using a club for powerful strikes. He could roll a bowling ball with his signature technique to trip fighters up, hop aboard Barney's prototype helicopter, the Flintstone Flyer, for his recovery, call Dino onto the stage to tackle onto foes, or have fellow fighters ride on top of, or use some of the not-so-modern conveniences of his time as tools. While it's not exactly based on the iconic cartoon, his stage would be Rock Vegas, perhaps on the Stone Age version of the strip, as I think that'd be more interesting than any of the locations in Bedrock itself. But regardless of the stage choice, it'd definitely be a fun inclusion.
King Kong.
While I definitely think there are some changes that need to be made in order to make him both more viable and fun to play against, including the Iron Giant in the roster was ultimately a great decision. It's cool and interesting to have a fighter that's massive on the roster. It really makes you laugh at the Ridley is too big argument. But just having one seems kind of out of place. I would have loved to go with Godzilla, but Toho officially owns the rights, not Warner Brothers. But you know what kaiju they do own? The original All-American Kong, from which another famous Kong was potentially inspired by. King Kong. Take a shot every time that I say Kong. It's really not hard to imagine how he'd play. The ultimate unga-bunga, hit stuff really hard character. Maybe he could toss a plane as a projectile, but all in all, he'd be a deceptively simple fighter. He's really good at hitting things, but his super armor is easy to exploit as most of his moves have it. Grappling attacks or any move that breaks armor will leave him as combo food. As for a stage, Skull Island is an option, though personally I think it'd be really cool to have a stage set on the Empire State Building with aircraft flying around acting as platforms, and having the whole stage be black and white, maybe with an old film grain filter over it.
Gandalf.
For a bit of a change of pace from gorillas and cavemen, let's go with one of the mightiest mages ever known, Gandalf. We know he was intended for the game at some point, but he has thus far not made his appearance over potential legal issues with the Tolkien estate. But nevertheless, Warner Bros. Does in fact own the rights to video game appearances of the Lord of the Rings IP. Whether this appears in crossovers is questionable, but if they can appear in MTG Arena, they must not be entirely impossible to work with. So, how would Gandalf play? He'd be less of a trapper style of mage and more focused on extremely powerful casting, calling many bolts of lightning down in front of him like Sora's Thundaga in Smash, but with greater distance, creating a massive wave that pushes foes away, potentially ruining their recovery as his side special, using his fireworks with a down special, and his eagle to recover. Maybe he could even have a passive that buffs nearby allies around him, as his ring of power is described to inspire courage in those around him, even the naturally timid. Speaking of Narya, some of his close-range attacks with his staff would have fire effects, and maybe even fireball projectiles to truly keep him as the ultimate zoner. As for his stage, in the files of the game there's dummy data for both Hobbiton and Mordor, though I would personally prefer the former, as the Shire theme is absolutely beautiful and would make a great background track.
I was protected by the monks of Azarath. I was raised by my friends. They are my family. This is my home, and you are not welcome here. Azarath Metreon Xantha!
Raven.
I think it's been more than long enough. We can afford to bring in a new DC character, and while I think more villains are definitely needed, those can be addressed later. We need someone popular, whose status is evergreen in DC lore, and honestly, someone to fill out another support role. And I think, based on the music, you can probably guess who I have picked. Hailing as the representative of the Teen Titans, Raven's joining the battle. Her kit really is just handmade for support. While she's an insanely powerful fighter in her own right, the way her powers work make for a helpful kit. For one, she's a soul empath, something that could be translated with healing capabilities like Steven's, or if that's on cooldown, send your soul self out to block damage for an ally. It'd be near instantaneous, but with the downside of increasing Raven's damage. She could use her magic to catch projectiles and essentially delete them like Rosalina's down special in Smash, and she could teleport herself and nearby allies to safety. She's not the kind of person who actively swings her fist around much. Maybe she could even puppet her soul self to extend her range at the cost of being weaker up close? Either way, I think everyone's first goth girl crush would be a perfect fit for the roster. Infinitely better than Black Adam. And make sure to use the best version, from the original Cartoon Network run of Teen Titans. As for her stage, I feel Titan's Tower is pretty obvious, complete with a remix of the Puffy Amiyumi banger that, admit it, is stuck in your head right now.
You guys get Animal. I'll take care of Jumbo.
Ben Tennyson.
For our final two newcomers, I felt it necessary to create a brand new class, as neither of them I feel is a perfect fit for any one style. The first of our two fighters is our other classic Cartoon Network rep along with Jack, a character who, frankly, might as well be the mascot of the network, at least if we're talking the sheer amount of cash WB raked in off of him. 5, count them, 5 series, multiple TV movies, live action and animated, crossovers, and plenty of merchandise. Naturally, I am referring to the hero of heroes, Ben Tennyson. As for which version, as much as I think the Alien Force design would fit more naturally with the playstyle I went with, I gotta go with the OG, as I believe it's the most iconic. Ben's a special character, in that he only has 2 special moves. His neutral special is Transform/Revert. By holding the button, Ben will open a menu like Shulk's Monado arts, allowing him to select one of 5 aliens from the original series. If he's already an alien, holding the button will forcibly cause him to revert. His other special is his up special, Stinkflight. Ben transforms into Stinkfly and gains the ability to temporarily fly freely, and will even automatically spit homing acid shots at nearby enemies within a certain range. So, which aliens did I pick and why? From Ben's original lineup, I chose Forearms, Diamond Head, Accelerate, Gray Matter, and Heat Blast. Why these 5? Because each of them is a representative of one of the other 5 classes in the game. Forearms for Bruiser, Diamond Head for Tank, Accelerate for Assassin, Heat Blast for Mage, and Gray Matter for Support. They don't quite have complete movesets, each of them only has the standard attacks, each with an identical aerial version, and only a single special, accessed by tapping the neutral special button. Forearms will throw a boulder that moves slowly and has a short range, but his melee attacks combo together well and hit hard. Diamond Head's special has him create a wall of his crystals, which can act both as a platform and shield from attacks and projectiles. His melee attacks are much slower, but have super armor. Accelerate is the fastest of the bunch, and his attacks are weaker than most. His special is a light speed dash that will crumple an opponent to the ground if it hits, opening up for his ally or himself to follow up and extend the combo. Heat Blast special shoots a rapid moving fireball that moves straight forward, and all of his attacks leave an afterburn effect on opponents. He also creates small fire traps in the spots he lands, though they're fairly stubby and don't have a lot of range. Gray Matter's attacks are the weakest of the bunch, but he makes up for it in his special's ability. He can create devices that act as items. He'll always create them in the same order, but he can build a ray gun for himself or an ally to fire as a projectile, a shield generator that stays in one spot but gives both himself and his ally gray health that needs to be reduced before they'll take further damage and knockback, and a sticky grenade that can be attached to enemy fighters and detonates after a short time. Ideally, you'll switch between each form to take advantage of all their tools in a match, making Ben one of the deadliest and most versatile fighters in the roster, but being possibly the hardest to master. And as a bonus, His standard attacks will temporarily transform him. The third hit of his side attack turns him into Wildvine for extra range, his downward aerial attack transforms him into Cannonbolt to perform a mighty dropping attack, and his up attack turns him into Ripjaws for a dual slashing strike with his claws, while his default taunt turns him into Wild Mutt, Upchuck, or Upgrade, each with a unique animation. His home stage would be kinda like Nigel's stage in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, or Helga's in the first game, a stage where you'll battle on top of the Rust Bucket as it travels through the country. Perhaps some of Vilgax's flying drones could appear as temporary platforms and hazards as well. Before I reveal the last fighter, I want to offer a quick disclaimer. This character hails from the divisive Wizarding World franchise, and while I certainly do not condone the awful beliefs of the franchise's creator, I do believe that the series' core message is a positive one. That said, this video is about building a fun and interesting roster, and I feel that this warrants including the character as they would offer a unique and diverse playstyle different to anything that came before, which is why I ultimately decided to include them.
Look who's here. Ah, come to see the show.
You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
Hermione, no!
Hermione.
Hailing from the Wizarding World, I chose not Harry. As much as I do believe that the main character should usually be the first chosen representative, Harry himself doesn't really have that much moveset potential outside of a few select spells he prefers and his broom. But his friend Hermione, on the other hand, is one of the most gifted witches not just of her generation, but in all of Wizarding World history. Her mastery of the magical arts is second to no one of her age. Like Ben, her kit is designed to fill whatever role is needed, though she specializes in mage, support, and assassin techniques. She is not a physical attacker in the slightest. Even her standard attacks are projectiles that function like the combos in Hogwarts Legacy. Her standard attacks see her using Bombarda, the exploding charm, as her neutral, which has a set distance, Incendio, the burning charm, to emit flames from her wand as an up attack. Her side attack ends her basic casting combo with Depulso in order to launch foes away, and her down attack uses the leg sprouting charm, which doesn't have a name revealed in canon but is so funny I decided to include it anyway. It grows a leg on the ground nearby to do a kick that launches upwards. Her down special, Study Session, allows her to change her neutral and side specials to change up her playstyle. She can switch between Charm Style, which is a hit and run style with shorter range spells, Potion Style, which allows her to create supportive potions to debuff enemies or buff her own allies, or Defense Against the Dark Arts Style, which has her bust out the most powerful spells with the biggest cooldowns. Her up special allows her to apparate as a recovery. In Charm Style, her side special is Accio, which pulls an enemy fighter in range towards her, and her neutral special is Confringo, the Blasting Curse, her best launching option. In Defense Against the Dark Arts style, her neutral special is Stupefy, the Stunning Charm, which, surprising no one, acts as a temporary stun for about a full second on full charge, and her side special is Defendo, a spell that causes a slashing wind to cut through an enemy. It hits multiple times and deals no flinch, so if it's moving in the same direction as a running fighter, it'll rack up damage like crazy. In Potion style, her neutral special is Brew/Use Potion. Based on the amount of time she holds down while stirring the cauldron, she can create a Wiggenweld potion for a light heal, Pepper Up potion, which temporarily increases damage dealt and speed on the ground and in the air, or Felix Felicis, which temporarily halves incoming damage and knockback. She can hold the special button to drink it herself after brewing, or tap it to toss it towards her ally. Her side special in this style has the same property, Protego, which can be applied to herself by holding the button or her ally by tapping, negating all damage entirely for a total of 3 seconds, but has an extremely long cooldown. Finally, her stage is naturally Hogwarts Castle, and you could literally put it anywhere in the castle. The Great Hall, the Grand Staircase, the Astronomy Tower, or even have it move all around the castle like a traveling stage, so you could include places like the Forbidden Forest or the Quidditch pitch. The potential is limitless. And there you have it. Every fighter I would have included in this hypothetical alternate universe, where Multiversus launched with more time in the oven, with a larger, more diverse roster, celebrating more of the IP Warner Bros. Owns. We have
Arya Stark, Batman, Ben Tennyson, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Finn, Fred Flintstone, Gandalf, Garnet, Gizmo, Harley Quinn, Hermione, the Iron Giant, Jake, King Kong, Marvin, Raven, Rain Dog, Rick, Ruby, Samurai Jack, Scorpion, Shaggy, Steven Universe, Superman, Tom and Jerry, Velma, The Wicked Witch, Willy Wonka, Wonder Woman.
Our stage lineup includes
Aku's Fortress, the Batcave, the Chocolate Room, the Court, Cromulons, the Empire State Building, Galactic Protectorate Starship, Hobbiton, Hogwarts Castle, Munchkin Land, Palace Gates, the Rust Bucket, Scooby's Haunted Mansion, Sky Arena, Streets of Vale, Throne Room, Titan's Tower, Treehouse, Trophy's Edge, Viva Rock Vegas, WB Water Tower.
30 fighters, 21 stages. Not half bad if I do say so myself. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm having too much fun here, so I'm gonna give you all a little bonus. Hypothetically, this game, despite the bigger budget, would still probably be free to play and offer a battle pass system. So why not say they'd get seasons of DLC you could buy all at once or separately? I'm not gonna go even close to as in-depth, but I picked out fighters to fill out the roster all the way through Season 3, with a brief idea of how some would play, following the same rules as before. Each season would give 6 new playable fighters, but last a full year. New series would bring a home stage with them. So, who did I choose?
Season 1.
Kicking things off, each season will have a new fighter from DC, but we're going to try to keep the origins just as diverse with each season as the base roster, shooting for the similar numbers in each class and from the type of media each fighter is from.
Aquaman.
Starts off the first season, a composite version, like his DC contemporaries, primarily featuring the classic outfit, but using that badass harpoon hand he had in the Justice League cartoon, and maybe a beard that would make Jason Momoa blush. If there's one thing about those movies that's good, it's that Jason Momoa looks really freaking cool. He'd have some water-based attacks, and maybe could even use certain sea creatures as summon projectiles, bringing all the May players from Guilty Gear. He could also use tentacles like Injustice for light trap play, though he'd primarily be a bruiser class. Next up, a mage.
Beetlejuice.
Iconic horror mascot, Ghost with the most. His moveset would entirely revolve around his shapeshifting and reality-altering powers. He could even have a mechanic where he could haunt a fighter and slowly make them take extra damage at the cost of himself taking damage while active, though he'd mostly make traps for his specials. Next up, hailing from Adult Swim,
Brock Samson.
From the Venture Brothers. He's easily the most iconic character from the series, and Patrick Warburton's voice is a national treasure. He wouldn't have a super complicated moveset, but he's a master of hand-to-hand combat, and he wields a Bowie knife, so he could make a fun tank grappler playstyle. Another mage, since I did end up with one extra, but by far his pedigree as an iconic character speaks for itself. Roadrunner's eternal rival,
Wile E. Coyote.
Could bring a massive amount of his Acme-purchased equipment to the table in an attempt to take down his foes in Multiversus. Like Bugs and Daffy, with over 50 years of cartoons to pull from, there's more than enough material to make him unique, and he was always one of my personal favorite Looney Tunes. Next up, our assassin for this season, hailing from the beloved Supernatural series,
Dean Winchester.
I'll admit, I'm not super well versed in this series, but according to the Heroes Wiki, he's great with weaponry, including swords, throwing knives, explosives, and firearms. I don't know if guns are off the table for this game, but even without them, he has more than enough to warrant this playstyle. I considered even making him a hybrid, but I felt Assassin was the best fit. Lastly for this season, our support character is
Weiss.
Ruby's big enough to warrant a second character, and her semblance is perfectly suited to support, with the ability to manipulate time, create shields, exert physical force, and even be used as a power source. Literally perfectly suited to the support role.
Season 2.
Hot off the presses, if we have one Winchester brother, we have to have the other.
Sam Winchester.
Would fulfill as the bruiser of the season, and while his moveset would have slight overlap with Dean's, Sam has some demonic powers he could utilize, which grants him psychokinesis, superhuman strength, and magic, including creating portals, which he could use for recovery and summoning demons and angels. Am I saying turn Sam into a stand user? I'm not saying that. Next up, our first DLC hybrid fighter, and it's our third classic Cartoon Network rep.
The Powerpuff Girls.
That's right, all three of them. You could switch between who's the leader with the down special, and summon the others in for MVC-style assist attacks, just like the Angry Beavers in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. Blossom is the bruiser of the three, primarily focusing on hitting hard. She can also use Ice Breath. Bubbles is the support class, hitting the weakest, but having two unique abilities only she can use. Supersonic Screams, which deal no damage but push fighters back, and like Pom in Them's Fightin' Herds, she has a special connection with animals and can summon them to the stage to act as traps to extend her combos. Buttercup is the assassin of the three, and utilizes her superior speed, faster attacks, and eye lasers to get the jump on unsuspecting fighters. We've got some heroes, so let's throw in our next villain, and next DC character.
The Joker.
I don't want to overload the roster with Batman's Rogues Gallery, but Joker is the most popular DC villain, hands down, and he's got pretty great moveset potential. Acid-squirting flowers, razor cards, the Joy Buzzer, not to mention his cane, explosive toys, a bazooka that can shoot bombs with Joker venom in them, grenades, the flamethrower lighter from the original Batman movie. He really has it all for options, perfect for our mage for the season. As for our assassin, Lord of the Rings really needs another fighter, and I think
Aragorn
is the obvious pick. He's another one of the main members of the Fellowship of the Ring. He'll focus on getting in with his sword, though he does have some other skills at his disposal to help keep fighters at the range he wants them at. He has a bow, of course, as well as the ability to command the spirits of the army of the dead to attack, and he can drop Kingsfoil herbs to lightly patch himself or his ally up. Next up is the tank, and for this I chose
Dexter.
From Dexter's Laboratory, another classic Cartoon Network pick. It doesn't really matter which one you choose, but Dexter has multiple really cool mech suits he could use to fight with, not to mention the vast amount of devices he can create. Maybe you can make him like Diva in Overwatch, where after taking enough damage the mech detonates but ejects Dexter, and he exists with a second life in a weaker state. Last up for this season is the support, and you might be surprised to find out that it's
Pennywise.
He'd be a weird fighter, focusing on debuffing enemies rather than buffing his allies. He could teleport to the shadows fighters cast, spray black goo that slows enemies who touch it down and cause them to take damage, bite with his creepy teeth, attach balloons to enemies or allies to make them lighter, improving recovery but making them easier to launch, and if he got a kill, he can conjure a copy of the fighter he destroyed to act as an ally temporarily. If he takes too much damage, he'd turn into his true form, making him lose access to all of his special moves except for recovery, but making him heavier and much faster, though his moves are much more predictable and primal.
Season 3.
Alright, final season for the video, and I think this one has the craziest lineup yet. Starting off with a movie character, one who is a long time coming.
Neo.
From The Matrix. He'd be an assassin type, mainly focusing on quick-striking martial arts, but he would have a special property. If he presses down special when he's about to be hit by a projectile specifically, he'll activate bullet time for himself and his ally, slowing everyone else down and giving them a few seconds to press the attack. He could also have a special where he hacks a fighter, disabling their specials for a brief duration, though this would have a very long cooldown. Our DC pick is our final hybrid fighter, and he had to be one due to the limitless potential of his power ring.
Green Lantern.
Would be able to create multiple different things, from traps to shields to weaponry, and he'd be able to use them either from melee or range, making him highly versatile, and you could have multiple different lanterns playable. Hal, John, Guy, Kyle. For our mage, we have another team fighter.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yup, Master Shake, Meatwad, and Frylock all grouped up together. Master Shake canonically can shoot blobs of ice cream milkshake, which could act as traps, and other things he throws on the ground tend to explode. Meatwad can be kicked around like a ball and bounce off objects, as well as shapeshift into just about anything for melee attacks, and Frylock has laser eyes. They'd be mostly ranged focused, but have light trapping capabilities, and as a bonus, like the Ice Climbers, you can KO different members of the team independently. Master Shake is the main body though, so if he gets KO'd, the whole team goes down. KOing Frylock or Meatwad just disables their moves. Our next two fighters, one tank and one bruiser, both hail from Cartoon Network.
Kevin Levin.
Specifically, in his classic monster hybrid form, adds a new villain to the roster and allows us to tap into more of Ben's abilities. He's fast for a tank, and he can use his side special to phase through objects like Ghost Freak, similar to Danny in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. He gets a third jump and can spit acid globs, and he creates pillars of crystal like Diamond Head, uses Heat Blast Pyrokinesis as recovery, and uses both forearm strength to grapple targets and Wild Mutt's claws for rapid slashing attacks. Our bruiser for this season is a personal pick. Realistically speaking, he'd probably not get picked, but
KO!
From OKKO Let's Be Heroes would admittedly be kinda just Ryu as a kid, but OKKO is a comfort show for me, and I really like this little guy. Plus, every fighting game needs Ryu in some form, even if it's just his moveset on someone else. Our last fighter is an intentionally weird pick, because sometimes you just gotta go with one. I wanted another character based on a live-action property, as well as a joke character, and I narrowed it down to one in particular that I only recently found out is owned by Warner Bros., a classic 90s sitcom that still has fans to this day. But, like with another character previously, I specifically chose to not include the main character, as one character stuck out as both perfect for a support role and because it'd be hilarious to see him in a fighting game. Hailing from Seinfeld,
Kramer!
Some of his moves would be pratfalls, but he can also use the Beach Cologne to debuff fighters, set loose his chicken Little Jerry to attack or aid in recovery, use pool cleaning equipment from that time he was mistaken for a pool boy, or even toss a legally distinct Junior Mint to an ally for a light heal or buff. Kramer's ridiculous antics give him more than enough material to work with. Plus, it'd be absolutely hilarious. Have you seen a more punchable guy than him? Other than Sheldon Cooper? That's maybe a Season 4 idea, just so we can beat him up. Alright. I have to stop somewhere, otherwise I'll just keep going all day. Well folks, there we have it. How I would have built the roster for Multiversus if I were in charge and given free reign over the roster from the corporate overlords of Warner Bros. Of course, while this is 100% a hypothetical, any of these characters could end up in the game at some point, and I'd gladly welcome any of them. So, how'd I do? Anyone you'd be interested in maining? Do you hate my lineup? Let me know who you would include or would like to see in the comments. And if you liked the video, or even a single idea, maybe give me a like and subscribe, or share with your fellow Multiversus fans? I'll be doing more Multiversus content in the future, as while I personally have a lot of issues with the game, it's got amazing potential just itching to be scratched. But for the time being, my name's been Gigi, the Nerd Incarnate, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you have yourself an incredible day. Peace out.